Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a closer look at Francis Ford Coppola's Godfather Trilogy. These films have become so iconic, like woven into our cultural fabric. I mean, who hasn't heard "leave the gun, take the cannoli"?
Right.
But what we're going to try to uncover today goes way beyond those famous lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got academic essays.
Yeah.
We've got excerpts from a book all about the Godfather. And we're hoping that all of this is going to help us understand why these films continue to fascinate us decades later.
It's true. The Godfather films aren't just entertainment. They're practically a lens through which we view power, family, and even the American dream.
Right. And to think the studio wasn't even sure about casting Marlon Brando.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get into that later. But first, for anyone needing a quick refresher, the trilogy follows the Corleone family,
Yes.
a powerful mafia dynasty. We see the rise of Vito Corleone, the original Godfather,
Mm-hmm.
and then the shift to his son, Michael,
Oh.
who reluctantly takes over.
And it's that reluctance that makes Michael's story so captivating. The films aren't just about gangsters and violence. They delve into the immigrant experience, the clash between old-world values and the pursuit of the American dream, and how these forces shape not just individuals, but entire families.
It's like watching a Greek tragedy unfold in 20th century New York City.
That's a great comparison. The themes of fate, ambition, and the corrupting nature of power, they're all there.
Speaking of powerful figures,
Yeah.
Francis Ford Coppola, the director, had his own battles to fight to get these films made. Did you know he started out working with Roger Corman, the king of low-budget B-movies?
Oh, wow.
It's fascinating how he went from that world to creating these visually stunning, epic films.
It's a testament to his vision. Coppola had this idea to blend the gritty realism of American crime films with the artistic sensibility of European cinema. And it worked brilliantly. One of the ways he achieved this was through a technique called mise en scène.
Now, mise en scène, for our listeners who might not be film buffs, is basically about how everything within the frame of a shot is arranged. The sets, the props, the lighting, even the actors' positions all contribute to the overall mood and meaning.
Exactly. And Coppola was a master of this. Think about the scene where Michael murders Soloso and McCluskey in that dimly lit Italian restaurant. The way the shadows play on Michael's face as he makes that fateful decision, it's pure visual storytelling.
Chilling, right. It's not just the violence itself, but how it's presented that makes it so impactful.
Absolutely. And speaking of violence, we can't discuss The Godfather without addressing the Mafia. The films both draw from and contribute to the mythology surrounding organized crime.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about. One of the essays we have suggests that real-life gangsters were actually influenced by how the mafia was portrayed in these films.
It's true. There are stories of mobsters adopting Vito Corleone's mannerisms, even using lines from the films. It highlights the complex relationship between art and reality, how fiction can sometimes bleed into the real world in unexpected ways.
Wait, so you're saying these gangsters were actually trying to be Vito Corleone? That's both fascinating and a little disturbing. Did the films create this romanticized image? Or were they simply reflecting something that was already there?
That's a question worth pondering. The films certainly didn't shy away from depicting the brutality of the mafia, but they also presented a certain code of honor, a sense of loyalty and family that, for some, might have overshadowed the darker aspects.
It's that moral complexity that makes these films so compelling. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
You're never quite sure who to root for? Because even the most ruthless characters have moments of humanity.
Precisely. And that's especially true when it comes to the violence in the films. It's never gratuitous. It's always strategic, either to eliminate a threat or as punishment for betrayal. What's interesting is how the films also show a shift in how justice is perceived.
You mean the whole an eye for an eye mentality?
Yes, but it goes deeper than that. In The Godfather, the traditional legal system fades into the background. Instead, it's the church that emerges as the ultimate moral authority.
Which makes sense, considering the importance of religion and tradition in the Italian-American community that the films portray. This portrayal of violence is also tied to how Italian-Americans are represented, which is a complex issue in itself, right?
Absolutely. The films tap into this nostalgia for a bygone era of strong family values, but they also perpetuate certain stereotypes. The question is, do they do so consciously? Or are they simply reflecting the perceptions that existed at the time?
That's a tough one. But what's undeniable is that the film's portrayal of family, masculinity, and ambition struck a chord with audiences, especially during the social and political upheaval of the Vietnam War era.
It was a time when traditional values were being questioned, and the American dream seemed increasingly elusive for many. The Godfather, with its focus on family and tradition, offered a kind of escape, A romanticized vision of a world where loyalty and honor still mattered.
Even if that world was built on violence and corruption. One thing I found really surprising when I was looking at the source material was the connection between The Godfather and opera. I never would have made that link on my own.
It's there, though. Coppola cleverly weaves operatic elements throughout the trilogy. For instance, he uses these recurring musical themes called leitmotifs to represent specific characters or ideas. You'll notice how the music swells dramatically during key moments, adding to the emotional intensity.
So like a soundtrack for the soul.
Exactly. It's like having another layer of storytelling happening beneath the dialogue. And then there's the way Coppola juxtaposes the sacred and the profane, just like in a classic opera.
Give me an example. What do you mean by sacred and profane?
Well, think about the baptism scene in The Godfather. As Michael renounces Satan and embraces his role as godfather to his nephew, he's simultaneously orchestrating a series of murders. It's a chilling contrast, highlighting the duality of his character and the moral compromises he's willing to make. And that juxtaposition of the sacred and the profane is also present in the way Coppola uses specific operas to enhance the themes of the films. Did you know that Godfather actually incorporates elements of Cavalleria Rusticana?
Cavalleria Rusticana. Isn't that the opera about jealousy, betrayal, and revenge? I vaguely remember seeing a production years ago.
Yes, and those themes are so central to Godfather III, especially as Michael tries to legitimize his family's business, while also dealing with the consequences of his past sins. The opera's themes of betrayal and revenge mirror the events unfolding in the film, adding another layer of depth and meaning.
So it's not just background music, it's like a commentary on the action. It's making me rethink how I watch films.
That's the beauty of these details. They enrich the viewing experience on multiple levels. And while we're on the topic of Coppola's artistry, we can't overlook how The Godfather's success shook things up in Hollywood itself.
Oh, right. One of the essays talked about how The Godfather helped solidify the concept of the auteur director.
Exactly. Before The Godfather studios often had more control over filmmaking decisions, but Coppola fought for his vision. And the film's massive success proved that a strong directorial voice could lead to both critical acclaim and box office gold.
So Coppola was kind of a rebel, going against the grain of the Hollywood system.
In a way, yes. He even founded his own studio, Zoetrope, with the goal of giving filmmakers more creative freedom. It was this idealistic vision of creating a haven for independent filmmaking within the studio system itself.
But that didn't quite go as planned, did it? I remember reading something about One from the Heart, that ambitious musical he made.
Ah, yes. One from the Heart was a passion project for Coppola, a visually stunning film, but a financial flop. Sadly, it put a huge strain on Zoetrope, and the studio system wasn't quite ready for his revolutionary ideas.
It's a shame things didn't work out with Zoetrope. But even though his attempt to reshape Hollywood didn't fully succeed, his impact as a director is undeniable.
Absolutely. Coppola's influence on filmmaking can still be felt today. He paved the way for other directors to have more control over their projects, to bring their unique visions to life.
It makes you wonder, would films like Star Wars or Jaws have been possible without The Godfather paving the way?
That's a fascinating question. It's hard to say for sure, but The Godfather undoubtedly shifted the landscape of Hollywood, creating a space for more director-driven films. But let's shift our focus back to the narrative itself. We've discussed the Mafia, the violence, Coppola's artistry, but what about the ending?
You mean Michael's chilling transformation? It's haunting how, after all his promises decay about going legitimate, he ends up even more ruthless than his father. That final scene with him alone, having sacrificed everything for power, it sends shivers down my spine.
It's a brilliant yet devastating portrayal of how power corrupts. Michael, who initially wanted nothing to do with the family business, gets pulled in and ultimately becomes consumed by it. And that sense of tragedy is amplified in Godfather II.
Right. The way Godfather II interweaves Michael's story with his father's past, showing young Vito's rise to power in New York, it's cinematic genius.
It is, and those parallel narratives highlight the cyclical nature of violence and corruption. You see how Vito, driven by a need for revenge and survival, becomes the very thing he sought to escape. And then Michael repeats that pattern, becoming even more ruthless.
It makes you wonder, is there any escaping this cycle? Is redemption even possible in the world of The Godfather? I mean, by the end of part 2, Michael has ordered the death of his own brother. How do you come back from that?
Well, that's where Godfather III comes in. Decades have passed, and Michael is desperately trying to legitimize the family, to find some semblance of peace. But as we know, the past has a way of catching up.
And the operatic elements we discussed earlier, They really come to the forefront in Part 3, especially with the use of Cavalleria Rusticana, which is fitting considering all the betrayal and bloodshed that unfolds.
Exactly. Coppola isn't just using opera as a stylistic flourish, he's using it to underscore the film's themes, to heighten the emotional impact. And the ending of Godfather III, with Michael losing his daughter Mary, it's like a direct echo of Rigoletto, where the title character inadvertently causes the death of his own daughter.
It's heartbreaking. Both those stories are tragedies. But in The Godfather, it's almost as if Michael's ambition, his desire for power, is what ultimately brings about his downfall.
It's a potent reminder that the pursuit of power can come at a terrible cost. And it's interesting to consider how Godfather III also reflects Coppola's own journey as a filmmaker. After the financial struggles he faced with Zoetrope, he returned to directing studio films.
So you're saying there's a parallel between Michael trying to redeem himself and Coppola trying to revitalize his career.
It's certainly possible. Godfather III, while not as universally acclaimed as the first two films, is still a powerful and introspective work. Maybe, in revisiting the Corleone saga, Coppola was also grappling with his own ambitions, his own regrets, and the impossibility of fully escaping the consequences of our choices.
It's like The Godfather is this multi-layered tapestry, weaving together history, artistry, and even the personal journeys of those involved.
And what's remarkable is how the trilogy manages to be both a product of its time and a timeless story. It's rooted in the world of mid-20th century Italian-American mafia, yet the themes it explores resonate just as strongly today.
Right. Power, corruption, the clash between tradition and modernity. Those are universal struggles. Makes you think, if The Godfather were made today, how would those themes be explored in a contemporary setting?
That's an intriguing question. The core conflicts would likely remain relevant. We still see individuals and institutions grappling with the allure and dangers of power, the compromises people make for success. Perhaps the setting would shift from the world of organized crime to the corporate world, the political arena, or even the digital landscape.
Imagine a Godfather story set in Silicon Valley, with a tech CEO is the modern-day Don.
The possibilities are endless. But regardless of the setting, what makes The Godfather so enduring is its nuanced portrayal of characters. They aren't simply good or bad. They're complex individuals wrestling with difficult choices in a morally ambiguous world.
Like Vito Corleone. He's a ruthless mob boss.
Yeah.
But he also has this paternal side. He's a man of his word, someone people go to for help. He's almost a folk hero in a way.
Exactly. He embodies that tension between the old world values of honor and loyalty and the brutal realities of his chosen profession. And then there's Michael, who starts out wanting nothing to do with the family business, yet ultimately becomes even more cold and calculating than his father. It's almost Shakespearean. His tragic downfall.
I know. And the women in the films, they're often in the background. But they're not without their own complexities. Kay, for instance. She's not just a passive bystander.
Right. She sees the darkness in Michael, tries to pull him back from the abyss. Her decision to leave him in Godfather VI is a powerful act of defiance, and Connie, she evolves from this naive young woman to someone who understands the true cost of power and is willing to do whatever it takes to protect her family.
It's like all the characters are trapped in this web of fate, where every action has consequences that ripple outward. And that final scene in Godfather III with Michael, alone and filled with regret, it's gut-wrenching.
It's a potent reminder that even those who seem to have it all, power, wealth, influence, can still end up utterly alone if they lose sight of what truly matters.
After diving deep into these films, I'm definitely seeing them in a whole new light.
I hope so. And for our listeners, I encourage you to revisit the Godfather Trilogy or explore the source material we discussed. There's always something new to uncover, something to ponder.
And as a final thought, consider this. The Godfather reflects the anxieties and aspirations of the era in which it was made. So what does it say about our own time? What are the unspoken codes, the hidden power structures, the moral compromises that shape our world today?
That's a question worth reflecting on. Until next time, keep diving deep.